Hi, I'm Owen from Rask Australia. Thanks for tuning in to the Rask Network.
Before we get into today's show, there are a few things we have to go over.
Firstly, what you're about to hear and see is limited to general information only. It's not personal financial advice like you'd get from a financial planner. Also, it's important to remember that past performance is not indicative of future performance. That means that anything that's happened in the past, or we say today, is not necessarily going to reflect what happens in the future. Lastly, please consider that any of the guests or myself are featuring on this program may have a financial interest in some of the products or shares mentioned. That's enough from me. I hope you enjoyed today's program.
Karan, thanks for taking some time to join me.
Great to be here, Owen. Thank you so much.
We're going to talk tech, we're going to talk business, We're going to talk your story. But first of all, I always ask the teams of the guests who come on the show if they can give me some sort of insight or something just to make my guests smile. And Haley sent over this link to your LinkedIn that shows you accepting an award. And I think this was last night. And you look very happy with this. So Innovator of the Year, you were presented this award on behalf of Hnry. Can you speak to that for us?
So the Australian Business Forum runs an event. It's very flattering of her, but I did put it on my LinkedIn. So that's my fault. The Australian Business Forum runs an event once a year, sponsored by CommBank, and they hand out awards for people who, young heroes, so fall within a certain range. And so I was lucky enough to pick up the Innovator of the Year on behalf of Hnry.
Yeah, 2023.
And I got to put the suit on. It's not something I do very often anymore.
Yeah, you got the hoodie and the t-shirt on today.
I was happy mostly in that picture because the suit still fits, right? That's the main thing.
That's good. I've got 3 suits and none of them fit. I'm being genuine.
I'm recently married, so I think
Give it a few years.
Well, the weight management right now is being kept well in check.
Okay, great. Okay. So we're going to touch a little bit about you in just a minute. But first of all, can you give us the story of Hnry?
Sure.
Hnry without an E for people that don't know it. Where does it start? Where did it start? What is the story up until now and where are you today?
Yeah, sure. So Hnry was founded about 6 years ago in Wellington in New Zealand. So our 2 founders, Claire and James Fuller, same surname because they're married. Mm-hmm. They were contractors at the time. So they were living in the UK. They moved back to New Zealand, decided to get into contracting for the reason a lot of people do, right? Like you get more flexibility and you earn more money. Mm-hmm. And they weren't really sure what they were going to do they're sort of mid-career professionals, not sure what they were going to do next. And with those benefits of contracting come the detractions as well, which is the financial admin, the tax burden, and everything else that goes with that. And so they spoke to some friends, spoke to some accountants, got some, I don't think it was misleading advice as much as it was over-the-top advice on how they should manage their financial situation, which is set up a company, make sure you're compliant on these things. And a lot of it for really simple contracting cases like theirs, it's overcomplicated because accountants can monetize that customer base better, right?
I've had that experience. Yeah.
Right. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. So they very quickly switched into, they're both pretty smart operators, clearly, given what they've built since then. Going, look, we could probably handle this ourselves. We'll start a few spreadsheets, keep tabs on it, do our own calculations. Fast forward that sort of a year or so, and they had more friends coming into contracting going, look, what are you doing with this financial admin side of things? And they said, look, I've got some spreadsheets. Take the spreadsheets, use it yourself. And depending on which version of revisionist history you subscribe to, someone had the bright spark in the shower or the startup accelerator or a friend mentioned it, but they realized there was a business here. And I think the story, which is true, they knocked up a landing page on Wix.com or something, tidied up the Google Sheets and put up a $100 ad on Twitter and signed up our first 40 users. And from there, like that, we have never been able to match their ROI since then, by the way. Especially on Twitter. But since then, we've just grown meteorically. So we are now New Zealand's largest specialist accountancy. We're not quite sure, but we think by number of customers, we're probably the largest accountancy in New Zealand. We moved into the Australian market just over 2 years ago, and we've seen some tremendous growth and opportunity here. If I just talk about the service briefly, if you want me to. So the principal problem that Hnry solves is for the self-employed people of Australia and New Zealand. It's a addressable market of almost 2 million, and it's growing by about 50,000 or 60,000 new customers a year across the region. And really, the primary thing that you solve, if you think about when you move from salaried employment to self-employment, is you go from earning net pay to earning gross pay. And for a lot of people, that's an incredibly jarring experience, right? When you're just used to your employer dealing with the tax treatment of the income that flows into you, to you now having the burden, what will happen? You won't do anything differently with the money. So you'll get to the end of the year, you or your accountant will lodge your tax return, and the tax man will turn around and go, "You owe me 20 grand, mate." And you don't have 20 grand sitting around. So all of a sudden you go into tax debt. So what we're trying to do from the outset is get people compliant. And so when you sign up to Hnry, you get given a Hnry bank account. It's a small b bank account. It's a pass-through account. And so when the money flows into that account, we will automatically calculate the right amount of income tax, Medicare levy, GST if relevant, student loan if you want to make an allocation to your superannuation fund, a high interest savings fund. Money comes in, it's automatically distributed to those different sources. And the post-tax amount goes straight into your personal account. So what you receive in your bank account is yours to spend, and that tax headache is gone every time you get paid. The second thing is the Hnry app, which is tools for freelancers and contractors to run their businesses with. So quoting, invoicing, uploading expenses to get tax relief, access to reporting. It's incredibly difficult for self-employed people to get access to credit or lending. You need an accountant to authorize your financials. We are their accountants, and that's a third part. So we are a registered tax agency. We do our clients' accounting work for them. So we lodge their monthly or quarterly BASs. We do their annual income tax returns. They get a nasty letter from the ATO. We're the ones that deal with it on their behalf. And our revenue model or our fee model is we don't charge a subscription. We charge a clip on the ticket. So it's 1% of the income that flows in, capped at $1,500. And the reason we do that is because for a lot of people, freelancing is a lifestyle choice. And a lot of our customers, credit to them, have the benefit of either going in and out of freelancing, or they'll work 8 months a year and be like, you know what, I've actually done quite well this year. I'm going to take 4 months off. We don't believe you should pay for a service when you're not using it. And so we only get paid when you get paid. That's the origin. So we carry a lot of commercial risk around that, but there's a big principle in the business around fairness, and we think that's how the fairness plays out, in that we should only get paid when you get paid.
So 1%, just to summarize, 1%, you create this like pass-through bank account.
Yep.
And that can send money off in different directions.
Yep.
And you file that, you do the tax returns for your customers.
Yep.
And it automatically calculates GST, BAS, all those things you have to pay it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And it's 1%.
Yep.
That's pretty compelling.
Yeah. Well, I think so. And we've been successful because we think it is, right? And I should point out that when you're earning a salary income, you're earning a casual income, and then you take on self-employed income. So there's tax being taken out, there's tax not being taken out. If you're mathematically astute, you could probably go, I could probably work that out, but it's time taken. And then if you've got a high frequency of payments, so some of our customers will run Shopify stores and they're getting multiple payments every day. They're not sitting there updating what my effective tax rate should be on each payment that comes through and provisioning the right amount of money. That's what we do. That's what the smarts of the Hnry algorithm does, right? It is every payment that comes in, it is reforecasting your annual income and then working out what your effective tax rate should be, and then making sure the right amount of tax is being taken out and paid off to the ATO in your account.
What are the types of customers, so from industries or professions, that are most common on the platform?
It's really broad, right? So self-employment cuts across every single sector of the economy. But if I was to sort of rattle off the top 4 or 5 customer segments, so creative freelancers. So we have a lot of graphic designers, videographers, photographers, marketing and brand people, tradies, unsurprisingly, right? Obviously, particularly in Australia, and in New Zealand for that matter, a huge trading market. Health and wellness workers, really fast growing segment for us, particularly people working through and around the NDIS. what we call white collar contractors. So everything from barristers to management consultants through to systems analysts and software developers, and then lots and lots of gig workers as well, right? Uber drivers, DoorDash drivers, and the like.
Speaking of consultants, your background's consulting, right?
Yep.
So how did you come to be in charge of the Australian team?
So I was looking for an exit from consulting. I was at the sort of tipping point where you've got to I was at Deloitte for about a decade, and you get to a point where you've got to sort of commit to the next few years. And I just couldn't see myself getting passionate about that line of work anymore. I think we live in a generation that's extremely blessed when they tell the story of the early 21st century, perhaps, or take a little bit longer. They're not going to tell the story of Trump or Obama or anything like that. They're going to tell the story of where software ate the world, or where tech took the most dramatic shift in history. And I was sort of thinking about the next decade of my life, going, where do I want to play? Do I want to play in professional services, where it's frankly quite a outdated business model? You're charging humans at a margin. That's how professional services firms work, right? Whereas the technology and its potential to do good on scale is really compelling. And it was just by chance that I came across Hnry was looking to hire a head of Australia at the time, making its first foray into the Australian market. I got connected to Justin Lipman, who sits on the Hnry's board. He's a partner at EVP and Hnry's largest external investor, who connected me with James Fuller, our co-founder and CEO, and we hit it off. And 2 weeks later, I had a job offer and haven't looked back since.
Yeah, great. Are you able to tell us how many people use the platform?
So we don't release numbers, but you seem like a nice guy, Owen. So in Australia, we've signed up more than 30,000 customers.
Wow.
Active customer count varies. Obviously, it's freelancing.
Yep.
So that's
pretty big for a couple of years.
Yeah. It's been a really good run, but we still feel like a market of 1.5 million people in Australia, growing very quickly. We're only scratching the surface at the moment.
So a natural question then is so this is mainly for sole traders, contractors, people like this, subbies if you're a tradie. What about people that have slightly more complicated situations? So maybe like they have a company structure in place, and that's fair enough for their situation. Can they use it?
Not yet. It's something that is on our roadmap to look at. We're not sure to what extent we'd enter that segment. Just coming back to my previous point that we are really good at what we're really good at, which is serving ABN sole traders. And that market is quite deep. We've only scratched the surface. It's growing really quickly. There may be a pull through some of our, we have a really strong sort of go-to-market approach with a partner network. And through the partner network, there may be organic opportunities for us to try and think about adjacent segments like very simple sole director companies. But we are squarely focused on the value proposition for this core customer segment at the moment.
So so this probably answers the question, but why doesn't someone, because I imagine you get this question 100 times a day, why doesn't someone go to Xero or Quickbooks? Why do they come to Hnry?
Yeah, it's a good, I do Xero is the most often compared company to us, right? And we're big fans of theirs in the sense of what they've been able to do over the course of the last 20 odd years is incredible. Also a Wellington founded company now gone global, and credit to them, and where they play in the, SME to sort of larger company, not enterprise, but a huge enterprise, but they've really created a dominant position for themselves. There's probably a couple of things I'd say, right, about the differences between Hnry and Xero. So from a product design perspective, we're actually philosophically the opposite. So Xero uses a bank feed model. So they're essentially replicating your bank account and mirroring it, porting it into Xero. So there's a set of transaction records available for you. If you think about why that's been created that way, because Xero is principally software created so accountants can manage their small business clients. So the small business themselves will go out and do their business, get paid into their business bank account. The transactions will come into Xero, and then the accountant can look through those transactions and go, I'm coding it to this, general ledger code, whatever it is, right? And then from there, the accountant will calculate the effective tax rate through a lodgement and then tell the client, you owe the ATO this much money.
Yeah.
We take the opposite approach in that we replace the accountant. We are your accountant as well, right? And what we're trying to do is get you compliant from the outset, particularly where you don't have the cash flow available for you to go, well, I'm just going to keep 30, 40% of my income aside at such event when the tax event is available, because I'm not a larger company, because we're only dealing with self-employed people. So that's the reason we don't do bank feeds. We are the pass-through bank account. And so the tax event is treated at the point that the payment comes in. So before our customer sees the money, the tax has already been taken out, right? So like at the starting outset, philosophically, we're the opposite. And if you start from that point, then the next big difference is the method of distribution. Xero's primary distribution channel is accountants. Ours is direct to customers, right? Because we are their accountants as well. And so there's another big divide there in a pretty different approach to market. And then, of course, we stick to our lane, right? Yep. We only look after self-employed people. I think Xero is a really good product for companies where you are, I've got staff, and I'm looking to grow and expand my company. If you've got the needs of a lifestyle sole trader who is, I'm happy trading by myself, I'm being self-employed, running under my ABN, you're going to be paying too much for Xero and an accountant, and it's far too complex. You're paying for things you're not going to need. Hnry has been custom built to serve people who operate under this structure.
So I've got a couple of friends that operate businesses that they're sole traders, but they have other contractors that might work for them. And I'm assuming, so they're not company structure. Maybe you could debate some of them should be.
Yeah.
But that's all still handled through Hnry.
Yeah. So we don't have a payroll function inbuilt in Hnry. We have a partnership with a third party called PaySource at the moment, where essentially you run PaySource for your payroll, but then they'll port the information back to us so we can complete your BAS, because you need to report payroll information. But if you're paying subcontractors, it's basically like, so there's
expense.
It's a business expense, right? And so you just claim the business expense through Hnry and we'll get you a tax relief on that.
Yeah, great. So the bank account in particular that's set up, so this doesn't earn interest because money goes somewhere else, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, the bank account nets out to Xero almost instantaneously, right? So we don't hold money at all.
Right.
So the money comes in, it goes literally within 30 seconds. It's an automated process. Goes to the ATO, goes to your account. It's done. Right. So it's not earning interest because it's not sitting with us at all.
Yeah, right. Within Hnry, can you take that money and send it somewhere else? So you said like a high interest savings account. Yep. Could you send it to like an investing account, for example?
Yep, you can. Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a feature called allocations. And for most sole traders, superannuation is not compulsory, right? So you actually have to voluntarily contribute to your super. And, we know I don't need to tell you or your listeners how important superannuation is. And so we've got a feature called an allocation feature where a percentage of your income can go to another account. And so most of our customers will use that to contribute to their super. But then you can also just send it so we've got partnerships set up with Sharesies, StockSpot, Stake, and a lot of our customers, amongst others, will send money automatically into those accounts. So StockSpot, as the example, it'll go into their StockSpot account, and then whenever you reach whatever hurdle, they'll just auto invest that. Similar with Sharesies as well, right? So a lot of our customers do opt into that feature. The principal use case though is for super.
Yeah, that's great. That all makes a lot of sense. How about in terms of the tax returns that you do? Like obviously one benefit of having an accountant is that you can ask them the questions, the dumb questions that probably aren't that dumb that you need an answer to, or you're just unsure about. How does that work? You say like Hnry's the accountant as well. How does that factor in?
Sure. So we employ a team of chartered accountants who work for us, right? It's not outsourced. They're people on our payroll who work exclusively for Hnry. So at any given point, if a customer has a question throughout the year, you can jump on the chat, send in an email, book a call with one of our accountants. They are available business hours throughout the year. You have unfettered access to them. There's no limit on the number of calls you can place or emails you can send. And they will answer any question you have in the same way that you would engage your own tax agent separately as well. The benefit our team has as well is that they are absolute specialists in self-employment. So what you'll find is with a lot of other accounting firms is they're dealing with, 100 different entity structures at any given point. Whereas our team is purely dealing with people who are sole traders. And so the things you're looking for and, ability to claim X, Y, Z, or should I trade in this way? Or should I, my friend told me that if I set blah, blah thing up, I can get blah, blah advantage. Like our team know those things, right?
How about if someone had like a job like PAYG and then a side hustle, which was run through Hnry?
Yep. Yeah, that's probably 40% of our customer base.
Yeah, right.
And so the way to work is when you sign up, if you are currently earning a salary or casual income or have throughout the year, we ask you for that. So we need to know it because we've got to set your tax rate on your self-employed income. And throughout the year, if that changes, you just got to update us. Mm-hmm. Then when we get to your tax return, your filing time, we'll get your pre-fill anyway from the ATO. Yeah. And so if there's any variation on that, we'll be able to basically true it up for you at the end of the year. But it's really important for all of our customers that if they're on a salary or they go on a salary, be it part-time or full-time throughout the year, we prompt them about this heavily throughout the process. They got to tell us, right? They got to tell us because we got to get their tax rate right. But it's something that they're mostly pretty accustomed to, right? Like, like anything, when you're new to the service, there's a couple of, jarring points in the process, trying to learn how it works. But this is one that we front foot pretty strongly because we got to make sure we get your tax rate right from the outset. And after that, it's a pretty intuitive user experience.
Yeah. I've got a few other questions, and they're more just around like your beliefs around business and these types of things. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you, I've got in my notes here, is like, it seems like I'm a long-time investor in Xero, confession, and a lot of tech companies for that matter. But like even since Xero's inception was like 2007 or whatever, and then the last 5 years, like a lot has changed.
Yep.
Like a lot of platforms, a lot of innovative fintechs have come to market and scaled, like Hnry, right?
Yep.
So I'm curious how you see this all going. We had the ATO Assistant Commissioner in here this morning, Tim Lowe. I mentioned that. He was in the studio just sitting where you are.
Yep.
And he was saying like some of the stuff here is like really like the incredible technology that is available now. I'm curious, as someone that's like at the coalface and leading a business in this way, where might we be? Like just doesn't have, where could we be? I guess it's not set in stone, but where could we be?
Yeah. It's a great question, right? Let me put on my forecasting hat, my forecasting turban. I think probably the way I look at it is like, probably like you, Owen, sort of looking at technology cycles and hype cycles over the last decade or so. And we run through, various different ones. And if we just think about if we just zoom on to one from like 2 or 3 years ago, blockchain, right? Which was, you couldn't finish a conversation at a pub without someone talking about blockchain, right? Some crypto. And then they became crypto bros and whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
And then now we're absolutely in the generative AI space. I think if we compare those two, right? Like, and I would just think without any empirical data to support this, but the difference between hype versus reality. And we can almost do a little bit of analysis around blockchain because the hype cycle on blockchain is really now sort of there's still plenty of use cases still relevant and will last, but the hype that was blockchain in 2016, 17, 18 versus what it is now versus where AI and generative AI is versus where it might be. What I think is the long-term hype versus reality gap in generative AI will be a lot less than blockchain. By that, what I mean is that I think there's so much more potential and stuff that will stick. Like the developments in artificial intelligence in the last 6 or 7 months almost exceed what we had in the last 6 years, right? And what it's triggering from a thought leadership perspective, from an investment perspective, from an delivery perspective is just incredible. Like we're looking at it now ourselves going, how can we speed up payment processing? How can we improve effectiveness and efficiency of our customer support teams? How can we think about how we use data in more interesting and compelling ways to create more value for our customers, right? And that's just a few months of ChatGPT being available. So I actually think we're probably getting into another wave over the next couple of years of just absolute transformative tech that'll come to market, things we just haven't thought of on the back of this generative AI revolution. I'm really, really excited about it. I think it's gonna be super exciting. Particularly as a consumer, like, you know, one of the things you want is just to get rid of a lot of the mundane things in your life. We do that. Getting rid of tax and compliance.
Yeah.
So the more mundane things, like even I think like when I talk about, like, let's take a very basic example. I think about like drafting job ads. Like, I don't know if you've tried ChatGPT for a job ad.
No.
You literally 2 sentences and it will produce a job ad better than a graduate, you know, at Deloitte would. And it takes us 30 seconds. And I'm like, cool, I've got an 80% draft here. I've just got to tidy this up, and it goes online. Like, that's a huge time saving. Like, for me, I'm not drafting job ads on a daily basis. We have a HR team, but for them, like, it just improves their productivity and efficiency. And if you just multiply that by 20, 30, 40 use cases in a company like us, 100 people, just under 100 people, like that's transformative.
Absolutely. And good illustration of it as well. Okay, I've got 2 final questions, but we hear statistics. You mentioned before that the sole trader market is growing pretty fast, 50,000. And if you include micro businesses, which are a bit bigger, or small businesses, you get over 2 million just here in Australia, not to mention overseas as well. But no matter where you seem to go, a lot of small businesses fail, like a lot. A lot don't blow out the candles on their 5th birthday, for example. And I'm just curious what you think some of the reasons might be.
Great question. There's an inherent amount of risk that you take with being a founder, right? Like, you have to have a belief which is so askew with everyone else in society that this conviction I have around this business is very different because it doesn't exist, and therefore, like, I have to go against the grain at any given point. And I even think about us now. We raised almost $60 million in venture funding, but with every cap raise comes a different level of expectations, and you're not necessarily betting the house every single time, but you're still placing big bets, and you hope that none of them result in failure. But they will, if 1 or 2 of them don't come off, they will seriously damage your trajectory, right? And that's just magnified when you're early stage. I think there's probably a couple of things, at least just my observations of the tech industry and early stage tech, is that it's probably nothing that I'm saying which is revolutionary or new, but perhaps worth reinforcing is people get very excited about things which are not related to, frankly, making money, right? Yeah. And so, like, early stage business is just about cash flow. Like, you've got to make sure it's not just me finding customers and customers vanity metrics. It's, are you monetizing those customers? And secondly, there's a huge distraction around, and credit to the VC industry who've been able to make themselves so self-important in the sector, is that, you know, my key hallmark of success, I just said it 2 minutes ago, right, is how much money have you raised, or what's your next fundraising milestone? Like, funding is an enabler. It's not the outcome. The outcome is revenue and profitability. And I think there's too much, at least in this sector, focused on, you know, I attended this conference, or I spoke at that thing, or I got that award, or I went on this trade junket to the UK or the US, rather than how many paying customers have you grown week on week, or month on month, or quarter on quarter. And for you to unlock the next, you know, amount of growth, can you prove that your only inhibitor is capital, and then go seek capital? Not going, well, I'd like to raise money because I'd like to make an announcement, and then if we raise the money, perhaps we could get the next tranche of growth, right? So I think to a certain extent, people approach the problem in the opposite sense, and get distracted by all the other things, rather than just focusing on, am I building a high revenue cash generating business?
That's really great advice. And I think we should have this conversation maybe 2 years ago for some of the founders that listen to this. But that is great. And I guess one final thing is, like, I know you've got like a background in business, and you're like leading the business here in Australia now as well. But I'm curious if you could go back and just kind of explain one thing to yourself. Like, what's one thing you wish you knew that would have helped you on your journey? Other than make money. Make money,
yeah. That's obviously the first bit of advice. I think we followed that reasonably well at Hnry. I think it's and it's still something I'm working on at the moment, right? It's ruthless prioritization. Really, really ruthless prioritization. Like, I think one of the hardest things I found about business leadership is intraday context switching. Like, you'd know what I'm talking about, right? You got to be across like 15 to 25 topics a day, and they're just completely different to each other, right? Like, you know, from digital marketing through partnership related marketing to, are we going to paint a mural in the office, to like, you know, blah, blah investor, through to catch up with so-and-so, someone's performance development. You know, there's just so many topics you got to be across every day. And you actually need to find time and space for yourself to constantly be thinking about, what are the levers that matter most in terms of my business? What's not going on track now? And I am, if not the doer, I am the architect of ensuring that resources are devoted to making sure that lever goes in the right, that business outcome goes in the right direction. And if you're not making space for yourself to think about that, and then not making sure that that's like sort of top 3 thing every day, it's so easy to just get not distracted, but it's so easy to get involved in these things which are distractions to that thing. And I think, you know, as we're getting bigger and bigger, that's just getting harder and harder. And it's something I've got to, you know, keep myself focused on every day. And it's something I think I would, all of your listeners who are sort of, you know, SMEs, whatever stage they are in, it's one thing I've sort of learned, like, you know, going from just me, Hnry Australia, and to 25, 30 people now that we are, it's still that same thing every day. What are the top 2 or 3 things I need to make sure I'm on top of today?
I really like that. Do you use like to-do lists or checklists or anything like that in your daily routine?
Yeah, I do. I do use a to-do list app. We use Monday.com for task management as a business. I've got my own sort of little to-do list, but every morning I'll just be ruthlessly shuffling that, kind of going, what do I need to make? Like, it's almost like I have to make sure I get through all these. I try and keep it to a maximum of 6 things before I log off this evening. And it may not be complete, but get it to that point, which may just be, this contract must be reviewed and sent to a lawyer by the end of the day today. That's my job. And like, I won't switch my laptop off until those 5 or 6 things. And you start the day like that, but you get to 9:30 and your priorities have already changed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. How about at the end of the day? Do you do anything, like, I'm really fascinated by rituals and things like that. At the end of the day, do you do anything to like take stress off your mind or preempt the next day? So like some people do the list in the evening, the night before, so they can go to sleep without the things on their mind. Yeah.
Probably not particularly well. I've, again, coming from a consulting background, we had bad habits of working really late. And one of the things that really used to irritate me, and I just can't do this at all anymore, is eating dinner in the office. I used to hate that. And I think in my early days in consulting, I'm thinking about when I was 23, this was maybe an occurrence at least twice a week, maybe 3 times a week. And I couldn't comprehend when people would, like, we'd order, I think this is probably pre-Uber Eats now, but whatever, delivery, you know, when you actually had to call a restaurant and they'll deliver the food. And, you know, you'd sit for half an hour in the kitchen and then go back to work. Like, you'd eat at about 7:30 and then pump through till about 10. I can't, I just have this phobia that dinner time, like, a laptop will not open after dinner. And so I'm happy to work for a couple more hours, but when dinner happens, I will not work. I can't understand the people who work. So that's basically, married, we try and push a strong work-life balance in Hnry. So we try and get everyone out of the office by 5:30. I myself try and make sure I'm not working till after 6. I think that's the main thing, is about how do you optimize your time during the day such that that list you made in the morning, you're not leaving anything at the end of the day, and that, you know, work doesn't encroach into other parts of your life. I say that about myself. My wife is an M&A lawyer, so she basically works 16 hours a day. And so I'll get home and be like, oh, I'm not working anymore. I've shut my laptop down. She's like, don't talk to me. I'm busy.
And if you're listening. No, well, that's great, mate. And consulting life, I can imagine it's hectic. Never been in it myself, but as is M&A. So
that's M&A's worse, mate. It's much worse.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I really thank you for coming down to the office while you're in Melbourne and recording telling us the story of Hnry, there is a coupon code that is available in the show notes. So if you want to give Hnry a try, why not? I will be. Go and check that out. We don't earn anything from it, by the way. It's just in there. I just ask kindly for something to offer the community. So if you are on this journey, if you're thinking about starting your business, you will find this video and the podcast also in the free course, and a link to Hnry there too. So, mate, thanks for joining me.
Awesome. So great to be on the show. Thanks so much, Owen.